The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Jesus and his disciples left from there and began a journey through Galilee, but he did not wish anyone to know about it. He was teaching his disciples and telling them, "The Son of Man is to be handed over to men, and they will kill him, and 3 days after his death, the Son of Man will rise." But they did not understand the saying, and they were afraid to question him. They came to Capernaum, and once inside the house, he began to ask them, "What were you arguing about on the way?" But they remained silent. They had been discussing among themselves on the way who was the greatest. Then he sat down, called the 12, and said to them, "If anyone wishes to be first, he shall be the last of all, and the servant of all." Taking a child, he placed it in their midst, and putting his arms around it, he said to them, "Whoever receives one child such as this in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives not me, but the one who sent me." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Earlier this week, a little boy and a little girl knocked on a door in a house of Exeter, and the little boy was wearing a Dracula mask. The little girl was wearing a princess outfit. "Trick or treat," they said as the owners came to the door. "Oh, very nice costumes," the owner said, "but why are you here? Halloween is not for another month." "Yes, we know," the little boy said, "but we're going to be away then." Jesus in the gospel today knows that he's about to be away. In about a month's time, he's going away to Jerusalem, where he's going to do the work of our salvation. He's going to suffer, he's going to die, he's going to rise again. And to get the apostles ready, he begins to speak about it. He begins to anticipate, hey, let's see where we're going here. Let's begin to live that path now. Because every Christian, every follower of mine has to embrace that way, the way of the cross, the way of humility, the way of sacrifice, the way of generous love. That's the road that leads to life. That's the road that we're about to take. But the apostles are rather ridiculous in the Gospels. They just don't get it. They so often act like children all the time. And instead of arguing about who can be of most service to others, they're arguing who is the greatest, who is the best, who can push others down and show that they're... It's just a childish behavior, and it would seem so silly and so quaint if we didn't see the same childishness in our own politics, in our own wars, in our own fights that we have in our own families, in our own homes. So often we act like children. And so Jesus places a child, a little boy or a little girl, in the midst of the apostles and says, okay, what can we learn from this child? And now, first of all, children are not perfect, just like us. Children sometimes actually exhibit the worst of human behavior because they haven't learned yet. They're still learning how to behave. In fact, children are often like testing their boundaries to try to figure out, okay, how do I live in life? What is correct behavior? And it's great. You have to teach them. You have to teach a child, little Billy or Susie, I know you just collected 1,500 pieces of candy trick-or-treating on Halloween in your pillowcase, but no, you may not eat them all on Halloween night. You can try, but you're going to get sick. And either the child's going to listen, or maybe they'll try to eat all the candy anyways and learn the hard way. Don't do that again. But they're learning. That's okay. Children do fight too a lot. In fact, that's why we've started when we call the children up for Team Jesus, I think we've decided we're now giving the book to the adult leader because so many children run up and start fighting with each other over the book. And it's great. It's their excitement. It's their wonder. But if you're not careful, you can start trampling over other people. And so, we are often childish in our own behaviors as well. But there is a whole nother side of childhood, and I think that's what Jesus is trying to put in front of us that's much more beautiful. It's that side of childhood that's filled with wonder and excitement and, think of curiosity. Think of a child on Halloween night going out and having an adventure, trick-or-treating, or a child on Christmas morning anticipating what's about to happen. Children can be filled with great trust, great innocence, great love for other people. As much as they maybe haven't learned how to behave all the time, they also haven't always learned the prejudices and the hatreds that mark so much of adult life. And children are actually capable of wonderful care and concern and cooperation. I was watching a video recently of these one-year-old twins, a little boy and girl, and they were trying to get up onto their parents' bed, which was very high. And so they were trying to figure out how to get up to this bed. And so the little boy comes down and he pushes his sister from behind right up onto the bed. And the girl is so happy she got to the bed. But now the boy has been left behind on the floor. And so the girl climbs down and she helps her brother up to the bed. And they keep going around and around and around. It's very cute. And they're not frustrated by it. They're very excited. They're laughing the whole time. They love helping one another. They love on this adventure. How do I get up onto the bed? How much of adult life is the opposite? Pushing people down, you think we would learn to behave as children, but we don't. We learn so often how to push people down, how to run the rat race, how to climb the ladder, how to become the greatest. That's what we want too so often. And, it's okay to a point, but so often there's kind of sort of an uncontrolled passion there. We haven't learned how to control our passions, our emotions. We haven't learned how to control what St. Augustine called the libido dominandi, the lust for domination, the lust for power. We want to push people down and climb to the top. And we just do that. And Jesus is trying to show us a different way. He's maybe trying to tell us that, hey, maybe all of that is actually not what life is all about. Maybe life is about something else. If you want to be the first, if you really want to be the greatest, become the last of all, Jesus says. Learn how to serve. Learn how to put yourself in the bottom place and help others up. And you'll find that you're kind of pulled up along as well to a higher life, to a divine life. When we see all these passions in people, all this lust for domination, all these things, I think our concern should be not so much how do I control all those children out there? Look at all those children behaving that way. We kind of see it in ourselves. That's what St. James says today. We have all these passions that are at war within us. I think we should be saying, how do I control myself better? Can I look at my own heart and I see all these passions at war within me? St. James says, where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder and every foul practice. Where do the wars and where do the conflicts among you come from? Is it not from your passions that make war within your members? When we look out in the world and see multiplication of wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, when we see increasing calls for political violence in our society, we see another school shooting last week, when we see conflicts in our own homes, again, the temptation is to want to say, what's wrong with all out there? Instead of saying what we should be, what's wrong here? I see those same passions at war within me. And if I'm not careful, they can be very, very strong. The other day I was out golfing with Deacon Eric, and if you don't know me, I'm a very competitive person. The libido dominandi, the lust for domination is very strong in me. I did a funeral for a 96-year-old woman this week, and the family was telling me that she played board games with the family all the time, but she loved to cheat. She would always cheat at apples to apples. And I said, I love this woman. She's just like me, competitive, wonderful. She's a saint. But anyways, I was playing golf with Deacon Eric, and Deacon Eric is kind of famous for hitting these really bad shots. He'll hit a shot 500 feet out into the woods, but somehow it bounces off 8 trees and lands in the middle of the fairway, right where he wanted it. And it's so common that we've given it a name. We call it the Lambert bounce. And so, sure enough, he hits one of these shots. We're on the 5th hole. He hits one of these shots, and it's just gone. But we know what's coming, the Lambert bounce. And so we wait. 1001, 1002, 1003. All of a sudden, the ball somehow comes flying out of the woods. It was like a squirrel threw it back or something, and lands right there. I was not happy. It was my turn next, and I hit a shot that was much better than Deacon Eric's shot. But it wasn't perfect. It kind of was like skimming the edge of the trees, and I never get the Lambert bounce. I get the Mason bounce, and it hit the edge of the trees, it hit a branch, and went bouncing right into the woods, gone. And I was so mad at that point. And you got to laugh at these things, and I usually do, but I actually felt this other emotion at that point. I felt this very strong, very negative, very ugly emotion. And it took me a few seconds to realize what it was. I didn't think about it, and I said, oh, that's jealousy. I don't like that. I have many sins in my life, but I'm not typically a very jealous person. And so it was kind of a new emotion for me. And I had to think about it. I said, I don't want this. And so I sort of exercised my will to say, you know what, as mad as I am in this moment, I am going to choose not to indulge this emotion right now. And Deacon Eric is probably very happy I did, because I don't think he would have made it to the 6th hole. That's how powerful this emotion was. And, that's how strong things can be in us. And, and if we don't learn to control that type of powerful emotion, it can lead to death. I mean, it could have led to the death of Deacon Eric, but it leads to the death of Jesus. It leads to the death of Jesus. The leaders of the people are jealous of him. That's really, they say, let us beset the just one, because he's become obnoxious to us. He's always calling us out on violations of the law. He's more popular with the people. We're supposed to be the greatest. And so we're going to push him down. We're going to get him killed. And it leads to a horrible sin. And so often that it can in our lives too. And we're going to be a little bit careful here, because not every powerful emotion is a bad thing. Not every negative emotion is a bad thing. In fact, these emotions are all good. They've been put in us by God for a reason. And even think something like anger, for example. Yes, it's a strong negative emotion. And yes, it can lead to sin. It often does. We often show way too much anger. But it's actually a good thing. It's the passion within us to put things right again when we see an injustice. And we can actually sin by showing too little anger. We don't usually do that, but sometimes we can. We really should care about this thing. It's pretty important, and we just don't care. That's kind of a lack of appropriate anger. And so virtue is very often sort of the mean between the extremes. It's showing the right emotion at the right time in the right amount, not too hot, not too cold. It's a little bit harder maybe to see how jealousy could be a good thing. It very quickly leads to sin, I think, but even at the beginning of jealousy is a certain desire to be the best version of yourself, maybe, to healthy competitiveness, to want to grow. But you just got to be very careful, because these strong emotions can lead very quickly to the deadly sins of wrath, of lust, of envy, of gluttony, of greed. Part of being an adult, learning to be an adult, is learning, first of all, to be self-aware of these emotions. At least I was kind of self-aware of what was going on within me. And then to make choices, to exercise the will and say, no, I don't want this, or I do want this. I'm going to make a responsible choice here. I don't have to act out on every emotion that I feel. I can actually choose how I want to live my life. And the more we do that, the more it becomes easier. It becomes part of a stable habit in our life. It becomes part of our character. It becomes part of who we are. Jesus says, here's a little child. Don't be childish, but be childlike. Learn to have that innocence, that excitement again, that trust in other people, and have generous love, want to care for other people. Recapture that childhood if you can. Put aside childish things, St. Paul says. Learn to embrace sacrificial love, which is the way of Jesus. But in there is a beautiful innocence, a beautiful childhood, childlikeness. And this is the wisdom that is from above, St. James says. That is first of all pure, then peaceable, gentle, compliant, full of mercy and good fruits, without inconstancy or insincerity. He said before, uncontrolled passion leads to war, leads to violence. But he says the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace.